It's the Bulls Podcast, episode 53.
Hey, Chicago Bulls fans! It's time for your Bulls Podcast. Here are your hosts, Marcus Couch and Wyse Black.
Welcome to the Bulls Podcast, coming to you from bullspodcast.com. This is where we bring you the latest news, reviews, rants, rumors, and opinions on the players, coaches, and front office of the Chicago Bulls. My name is Marcus Couch, and with me is my co-host, Mr. Wyse Black.
Yo, what's up, Marcus? What's going on with all my Bull lifers? Man, I'm super pumped today because, I don't know, I just feel very, very privileged and overjoyed to bring this episode specifically to the fans and listeners because it's one of those unusual episodes that don't come around often. You know, and this is one that I definitely think we're all, going to surely appreciate. You know what I mean? So, hey, man, without further ado, Marcus, do your thing.
Wyse, you know that we like to do some player associations with the episode numbers. We, of course, had Ryan Arcidiacono intro his own episode, being number 51, and we've highlighted a few, but we wanted to bring something special in number 53, and that could be Bulls number 53, NBA Hall of Famer Artis Gilmore. And when you talk about legends in Chicago, Artis was certainly one of them. I mean, let's look at his highlights. He was, nicknamed the A-Train, which is pretty cool. He is fifth in basketball in terms of overall rebounds, only behind Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Moses Malone, and Kareem. Then you got Artis Gilmore. That's some pretty good company to be mentioned in terms of a top five. He's definitely a legendary player. He was originally brought back into the Bulls. He was drafted early on in 1971 when Artis went to the ABA instead. The Bulls said, yeah, we still want you. We know that someday you're going to come to the NBA. When that happens, we want you to be a Chicago Bull. And of course, that did happen sometime later. It's really an interesting story, Wyse. All of Artis's accomplishments, it's just amazing. I mean, when we look at a legendary center, Artis Gilmore is absolutely it. He was an ABA champion, playoffs most valuable player, an ABA most valuable player, 6-time NBA All-Star, 5-time ABA All-Star. He's been the ABA All-Star Game MVP, 5-time All-ABA First Team, 4-time ABA All-Defensive First Team, NBA All-Defensive Second Team. He's a consensus first-team All-American and has had the accolades like no one can believe in terms of performance and efficiency. And he actually played in 670 straight games without missing a single game.
That's an Iron Man right there.
No kidding. So combined, he scored 24,941 points, had 16,330 rebounds, and over 3,000 assists. Wyse, this is what legends are made of, and we are so blessed to have Artis Gilmore on the Bulls Podcast.
I agree.
All right, without further ado, let's get into our interview with number 53 on show 53, Artis Gilmore. Let's just get right into it, Artis. I mean, you have got so many accomplishments in your career in the ABA, in the NBA. It kind of blows me away when I see all of the accomplishments that you've done in terms of rebounds and how many games you went through and the streak of 670 games and everything. What is it that you don't see on that accomplishment list that probably should be? Like, is there anything as you look back and go, man, I wish I had another shot to get this award or something else? Is there anything that looking back that you think that way?
Well, there's not anything as an individual award. Of course, I was fortunate enough to win one ABA championship, but everybody, for the most part, it is acknowledged for winning an NBA title. I would have loved to have had an additional acknowledgement with an NBA title.
Yeah. And that title that you did get with the Kentucky Colonels in the ABA, you were coached by Hubie Brown, which a lot of us know as a really incredible broadcaster. I think he's made more fans of the game just by his analysis within broadcasting in the game. But what was Hubie like as a coach for you?
Well, there's no question Hubie, as far as knowledge and experience and a way to relate that knowledge to his individual players. He had a system that he just really was able to break it down to the point that it was easy to absorb and to execute on the floor. So there's no question, as you guys have indicated before, he's very well known as an analyst on the networks. One of the things I've always said about Hubie, if there was an individual that traveled from nowhere, say, most people use the term outer space, and if that individual or person, she or he, was interested in sports and they have never seen basketball before, and to listen to Hubie in a way that, as an analyst, that he can share that knowledge is just incredible. He just simplifies it.
I agree with you so much, because he came to me just as I was starting to learn the game as a teenager, and to break it down as a coach would. And even, I grew up in a small town outside of Chicago. We didn't have much in terms of resources for playing the game, but I that resonates with me because Hubie is that way. So, Artis, I want to take you back 30 years, and I was at the Walter Payton Celebrity Golf Outing. And I got tickets from my cousin was dating some girl, and her mother was working the event, so they gave us tickets. And I had a great time at that event, met Bill Murray and Dan Marino and all kinds of people. But as I was leaving, the one person that I could not help but see was you in the parking lot. And I ran over and I shook hands with you. And that exact moment of shaking hands with you has been etched in in my bones ever since. You have got a vice grip of a handshake. And even in your book, I read in your book that Reed Griffith Fontaine even remarks about your handshake as well. How do you? What's with the handshake? How come you grab so hard and everybody remembers it?
It's a man's shake.
I just remembered it as just being a firm grip. I remember earlier, many years earlier, much earlier on, that Wyse, you mentioned the fact that you grew up in a real small environment, and likewise with me in a town, my hometown, Chipley, Florida, and of course, being left-handed, I remember this individual was kind of associated with the family, and he was, working with me with some things. Of course, my father was not available during those times because of other reasons. But this gentleman, the one thing that I remember him reaching out and was explaining to me about a handshake. And the first thing I wanted to do is give him my left hand because, and that was the first I read. He said, no, it's a right hand. And then the other thing that he emphasized, listen, that's not the wet fish. And he really emphasized that, listen, whenever you provide a really nice, firm grip, It needs to be a grip, and you look your individual personas in the eye. You look them in the eye, and you give them a firm shake. And so that was one of the areas that I really focused on and worked on, just having a really nice firm grip. And of course, it just exceeded and moved to a point where a majority, most people, was kind of uncomfortable with the grip.
I remember your ring mark on my palm. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And so I want to expand on this. I shook hands with Hulk Hogan one time, and I said, "You've got the second firmest grip I've ever had had in a handshake." And naturally, he asked me the question, "Well, who's the first, strongest grip?" And I said, "Artis Gilmore." And he said, "Yeah, I could see that." And that was how we parted. So, great way to leave a lasting impression on people. I mean, even in your book, I laughed out loud when I saw that. I wasn't sure if I was just the singular one there or what. So this is a great story. I'm glad that it kind of came full circle here, and you're back on the podcast after meeting you for so long. So,
well, thank you so much.
Yeah. So we have a number of questions, and one of the things that I've noticed about interviews with you and people that have talked to you and other professionals out there talk about your game IQ. How did you develop the skills in basketball that you have and learning the rest of the fundamentals of the game without a lot of the benefits that the professionals have now of film at halftime and, even during practice and things? What did you do to study the game in your time?
Well, first of all, I can certainly say that it was not easy. Reflecting back again in my hometown and dealing with and during that time, racism and just all the other challenges, and of course, growing up in a very large family, and there was my mother and father raising a family of 9 kids without the really support for those individual kids. So one of the areas where to get away was in basketball. I look back and one thing I heard the individual people have asked me before. I said, "How tall were you at this particular age?" And I said, I don't really remember exactly that. But the one thing that I do remember was when at the age of 12 years old, I wore a size 12 shoe. And then once the following year at 13, I wore a size 13, then moved up to a 13. And of course, for those years, of course, my mother had no means financially or any other means to find the shoes for me to be able to wear, and probably for the next couple of years it was not available. So there was a really late start for me in the game of basketball, and so I was actually playing catch up, learning the basics about the game and the fundamentals, and so I was certainly encouraged in those particular areas to really focus and learn the fundamentals. And there was some other issues that happened back in those days that also was part of the process as well.
Artis, you say that basketball was your escape. Like that's the same thing for so many kids today who may be underprivileged in terms of having the means of financial background or something like that. Now, during your time, who would you say was your biggest inspiration as a basketball player when you were coming up? Like, who did you kind of emulate your game after, if anyone?
Well, of course, the two the most well-known players in the game during that time. There, of course, Nate Thurman, but it was Bill Russell and Will Chamberlain. You know, the one game they would have one game of the week on black and white TV, and most of the time it was Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain competing against each other. So, you know, if you certainly had an interest in the game, you would, no question, focus on those two individuals and the things that Bill Russell was able to do as a left-hander, and of course that was part of the things that I was able to absorb and create within my skill set to be able to utilize over the years, and of course likewise with Wilt Chamberlain.
And so how do you learn it from just seeing the one game a week? That seems so tough in your mind. I mean, there was no VCRs, there was no DVD, there's no way to capture that media. I mean, it just seems like you really must have had to pay, serious focus to the game to get to translate it to your own game.
Well, absolutely. And my hometown was a very, very small town, and certainly, all the other we would reference to distractions now, like the pinball, the video games, the telephones, and all of those things. Certainly, there was only one thing to think about, and certainly, there was not any cable networks. There was nothing except that one game. You watched that game, and whenever, because in fact, I had to go to somebody else's home to watch the game because we couldn't afford a television, and so absolutely, that particular event would stay in your focus, in your thoughts. So, absolutely, you would have nothing else to really focus on except just that. And so, and then I guess you would sort of put it in a thought process exactly what was, taking place. You mentioned the kids that really had no other choice, and I like this endorsement that LeBron has put on that does with, I don't know which company, but he talks about things like that. The kids that, rather than they're just having to grow up in a real hardship, that things could happen a little bit different for these kids today. And that was a point of, that's been also a point of emphasis. I thought about that as well. Whenever during the time he talks about the challenge that he had as a kid, young individual growing up, and was able to learn the game and move forward and been very successful, and certainly giving something back. He's really giving back, and because he understands, and that's basically, and in some respects, what I dealt with as a kid, looking for an escape, and at that particular time, living. I grew up in as a Floridian, but the first interest for most people in this state is football. It's football country. Right. Nobody really basically. And so I was really fortunate to be able to have gained some experience in the game of basketball during those earlier years.
Did you ever play any football at your size?
I had interest, but again, there was other issues. The school was a really poor school and not able to afford the equipment, and perhaps it was better that way. But I certainly had interest and was moving in that direction to play football. But because of the lack of equipment, and I had as I indicated earlier, really large feet, and
Yeah.
the schools, the poor black schools, just were not able to afford those experiences for individual kids.
So let me ask. I'm gonna give you a couple quotes here from a few guys. I don't know if you've heard these quotes before, but this first one's from Dominique Wilkins. He said, "Artis Gilmore was a monster, the strongest man I've ever seen in this game, ever." And Bill Walton said he was so difficult to guard, the biggest, strongest, most powerful player. With all the adversity that you had and the lack of a lot of resources and equipment, how did you get that strong?
Well, it was a makeup process.
Yeah.
So I worked in the earlier years, with a long, thin frame body, working in the fields as a young kid, developing, in the working in watermelon patch, lifting watermelons, and picking cotton and doing just really field work and working with the hay. You had to bales of hay. So I learned a lot in the field work, and also I started to work a little bit with weights, not a lot, but I was able to develop some of the muscular strength in that particular area.
So you basically gained a lot of your strength from the environment. That is awesome.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So I got a question to ask, going back to your tenure, whether it be the ABA or the NBA. I got to ask, who was your toughest matchup ever, and what made them so difficult to play against?
Well, in the earlier years with the ABA, they said that, they call it the run and gun league, but certainly it was the real game of basketball eventually it developed into. But, moving forward, Bill Walton, of course, Bob Lanier, Dave Collins, even one of my former teammates, Dan Issel. But if there was one particular individual, I would probably say Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, because it was such an extraordinary offensive threat on the floor. So, he created such a tough challenge for me.
There's a video on YouTube of you blocking one of his sky hooks that's got several 100,000 views.
Oh, really? Okay.
That feel good.
You know what else is on YouTube, Artis, that's really funny to see? And I got to ask you about this, because this must just blow your mind. Of seeing yourself as a character in an NBA video game. I mean, in your wildest dreams, you probably couldn't imagine kids in their living room playing basketball on TV with your body and your game, right? Does this kind of blow you away when you think about this?
Yes, absolutely. I look back when you speak of the earlier years when I really enjoyed playing video games. It was like a pinball machine. You put 25 cents in and you bump it and shove it, do the flippers until finally, until you bump it a little bit with a little bit of additional pressure, then you get a tilt. And so the game was over.
Yeah.
So absolutely not. I mean, the technology and the way things have just developed over the years is just pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, as they call it, the Diamond Artis Gilmore card is actually one of the most popular. And I was just looking around because I was looking at some previous interviews that you'd done and things. And I was having fun because I watched where your character actually played against the modern Lakers team, and you scored 65 points and had 40 rebounds in the game. So
wow,
it's
okay,
pretty interesting. I mean, pretty cool. I mean, is there anybody? Let's just say for all those kids out there that are playing this. Artists, what one guy would you love to have played either past or present in a game of one-on-one?
Probably maybe either Bill Russell or Wilt Chamberlain.
Yeah.
Now, either one of those individuals, I would have, looking back, having the understanding of the game as I do now. Maybe in my earlier years, we're not experienced enough, but at my peak of my game and the peak of their game, I think it would have been an interesting challenge for me.
Well, maybe some kids will set it up and play it out on YouTube. We'll see some results. That would be so fun.
So Artis, speaking of 2K, they have you as the starting center on the all-time Bulls team, along with the likes of Michael Jordan, Derrick Rose as the point guard, Scottie Pippen, and others. But who would you say was your favorite teammate during your tenure with the Bulls from the 1976 to 82 or even the 87 season when you came back? Who would you say was your favorite teammate?
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed Michael for that short period of time. He was just really highly motivated, and he was just a very intense workaholic player. And I just observing the way that he approached the game was such an extraordinary positive way. So not only in the game, but I mean, I didn't play very much before I was released and moved on. But it was really an exciting time for me.
Yeah, and you came into that year, and that's when Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant were rookies, right?
That's right, absolutely.
And so, what was your impression of them as two young men of? I think they were 21 at the time. Did you have any impressions of them when you first saw them or first saw their game?
Well, it was no question. The Bulls had just an extraordinary analysis that they had recruited. They had made a really, really positive decision to combine these two individuals with Michael. And I felt that this was the pieces that was necessary for the Bulls to move forward.
Yeah, and Charles Oakley was also on that team. John Paxson, right? A lot of guys that are still kind of involved in the organization too.
Well, yeah, John Paxson. We really go back a little bit because I remember just before he arrived with the Bulls. He and I had 2 minutes to play together in San Antonio. And then, of course, it was part of a decision that was made to brought him to Chicago.
Yeah. And, there's stories, it's admitted. I mean, like Steve Kerr said, hey, Michael Jordan punched me in practice one time. We had an incident a couple years ago with Bobby Portis punching Nikola Mirotic out in practice. But I'm kind of guessing that that's a lot more common than might be reported. Am I right about this? In the old days, like a couple guys might scrap in the corner a little bit if things get a little too heated. This isn't just isolated of the time, is it?
Oh no! It was very intense, as I shared with you earlier. Yeah. The guys out there and in the earlier years, there was a number of young individuals working to keep their contract, and so they was very much motivated to basically whatever that was necessary in order for them to maintain a position.
Otherwise, they're on the bus going back home.
bus or whatever means of transportation they had to return to their whatever location.
Yeah. Let me ask you now. So much in your book talks about some of the adversity that you'd had to overcome, and as we go through, it almost sounds like it was set up so that you didn't really have a chance, yet you popped right through it all and became one of the best that there is. Like, what do you do to tell yourself every day? What do you tell yourself every day that kind of helps you overcome that negativity in life? And despite all that adversity and all those things that happened, what keeps you going forward every day?
Just a positive mindset, just focusing on that particular issue, whatever there were that was the most important at that particular time, and not looking at trying to absorb a variety of things, just one thing at a time, and that was my main focus, and certainly to allow me to really excel and move forward.
For sure. I want to ask, what would you say was your biggest transition from the ABA to the NBA, whether it be the schedule change, rule difference, competition, etc.?
Well, I don't think it was necessarily the competition. I think we played more teams, and then the arena was different, and a number of the arenas actually had more fans. I remember earlier we would play the Dallas Mavericks. No, the Dallas was the Dallas. The Dallas Chaparrals. The Chaparrals, which eventually become the San Antonio Spurs. After arriving in the game, of course, having a tremendous amount of success at the collegiate level, and all the fans and the support, and then you would arrive in Dallas and play a game, and there would probably be couple 200 or 300 people, if that many, and then and we played San Diego Conquistadors. We played them at San Diego State, and earlier we played the Indiana Pacers, and we played them at Butler College, and we played before the Coliseum in New York. We played at the fairgrounds. I have this really great shot of Rick Barry myself, and Rick, in fact, he carries that photograph around in his wallet today as a kind of remember and a reminder of what my skill set was like during that time frame. So if I had to speak of anything in particular that was different, it would probably be the arenas and having more of a variety of players to compete against. Other than that, I think with the acceptance, they said it was a merger, but just the acceptance of the 4 additional franchise and also adopting and changing some of the rules and brought those into the NBA, the 3-point play. It just really created a different level of interest of the game at that level.
Was there anybody, as you made that transition from the ABA to the NBA, was there anybody in the NBA at the time that you just, you licking your chops going, oh man, I can't wait to take on this guy?
No, I absolutely did not. You mentally and physically, you just you need to be prepared for each and every
for everybody
game. We never looked at in front or ahead. In fact, my earlier years, beginning, we really struggle in Chicago because I guess the adjustment of individuals, and of course, we excel at the very end of the season, but it was a tough transition at the earlier years.
And now you see guys. Now you see guys on social media, players that they have such exposure. They have clothing deals and product placement, and they use the fan base as leverage. And I was even kind of a part of that this summer with Patrick Beverley for the Los Angeles Clippers during the offseason. I think I told him, Artis, that I would pay for his gas money if he signed for the Bulls, and I'd drive his truck all the way to Chicago from LA. But so he loved that comment, and maybe that got him a contract. Who knows? But is there anything in social media? Let's just say I hand you, the time machine and a phone. Are there any moments of your playing days that you wish, I wish the fans could see a shot of this?
Well, I just think certainly, as you indicated before, the transformation of the game itself, and that was the whole objective, the game to change with the fans, and that's what has happened. In fact, I remember if you speak about the earlier years, the game was so different. Whereas like guys like Bob Cousy, those guys had two-handed set shots almost, and then all of a sudden the one-handed jump shot, push shot, and just an evolutionary process. And I think once the European players become part of the NBA, that really changed the concept of the way we view the game, mostly a perimeter basketball. So the evolutionary process of the game is certainly changed over the years. And if I went back in time, I don't know what possibly that we could change, except if there was a way to market it. That wouldn't be able to market a game to the point that you would have the kind of excitement and fans that you have today. You look back. I remember earlier years in the NBA. I think it was Seattle and well, they're the Wizards now, but it was Baltimore, I think, was playing a game. And it was like, I don't know if it was CBS, whatever network that would carry the game. And I was in Florida, and I was all excited about watching the game. And the game was on tape delay. It wasn't. So much positive and just the international flavor that's been brought to the NBA and the creativity and interest. So I don't know if you would have the thought process of, listen, this is what we should be looking at now, and watch in the future, 30 years from now, what's going to happen.
Well, but, look at where we are even in this moment right now with the three of us. Wyse and I are fans. He's a YouTube guru for the Bulls, with his own YouTube channel as well. We are one of maybe 12 podcasts by fans that are just about the Bulls the Bulls. There are hundreds of other podcasts that are dedicated to their own respective teams wherever they are. You mentioned that there was, the game of the week, and now we have NBA TV and NBA League Pass where we can watch any game live. And it's just, you're right. The exponentiality of it is crazy, and the fact that it's international is even more so. And so now that you say that, I have a couple questions from people actually around the world that submitted them to me, and I'm wondering if you would humor us to answer them. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. So Ryan Miller, who's in Perth, Australia, sent me this question to ask you. Have the Bulls ever offered to retire your number and raise your jersey to the rafters of the United Center? If not, do you know what the process is to nominate you for that?
Well, that's a great, that's an extraordinary question. Yeah. I'm thinking to myself, I don't know. I know Jerry Sloan and Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, and I'm trying to think, is there another individual?
Bob Love, I think, and
okay.
I don't think Norm Van Leer is.
And also, if you look at the Hall of Fame players for the Chicago Bulls, and you have, of course, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen,
Dennis
Rodman, myself, and Chet Walker.
I think Hall of Fame equals banner up there in the rafter. I think
should, right?
I think you get your jersey.
That sounds fascinating, but I don't know the process, and I guess I have never made an effort to try to follow through.
I think at the All-Star game, I think that would be appropriate.
Yeah, well, they would have to make that decision, and not. I don't think I'm the individual to try and.
No, but my call right after this is the Reinsdorfs. I'm getting them on the phone.
I think we need to start a petition to get that jersey up in the rafters, man. It's criminal that it is.
Well, I appreciate that, guys, but I'm not sure how that process. And that's a very fascinating question from this gentleman from Australia.
Oh yeah.
And I send my prayers out to those individuals over there in that country, and I know they're really struggling with the fires there.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to give you a question from our pal Kenyatta Wright, and he's from one of the Facebook groups that's pretty popular for the Bulls called Bullseye. And he asks, do you think traditional centers that play like actual centers, like you played, will return to the NBA in an abundance?
I really don't think so. I think it's part of the evolutionary process, the way. I remember in the earlier years, just to speak about the game, I remember like there was 24 seconds to bring the ball in the front court, and what some teams would do, not necessarily put just a press on one of your guards, but what they would do is kind of force them to use some of the clock so they wouldn't have quite as much access once they reached the front court, to run and execute an offensive pattern. So I'm thinking, then also I remember Boston and some of the other teams were very good. Like you had Dennis Johnson, who was the point guard, and he brought the ball into the front court. And what he would, the Celtics would do, they'd give the ball to Kevin McHale and Larry Bird, those individuals. They bring the ball in the front court, and that would preserve some of the time frame. But as far as centers actually going, returning to the old past and the back to the basket and playing on the low box, those days, you're looking at the 7-foot guys are like. I love Kevin Durant. Just moves such a smooth moving individual at his size, and the way he handled the ball. So, I do not believe that things are going to revert and change and go back where you have centers playing on the lower box and just the old a way of. Playing the game. I think that, you have in Stephen Curry's, those type guys are really, Kevin Durant, they stretch the floor and they can really knock down those 3-pointers with ease. And so it forces the big 7-foot individual guys to be quick and mobile so they could move out on the perimeter and contest those type shots. And so it's not part of the game anymore, where they're going to, you can expect them to move to the box. And I said the box is right,
Yeah.
you know.
In the paint, yeah. So, and that's the thing is, I think wasn't that part of the most fun in basketball when you had a traditional center versus center matchup where it was just going to be a battle? I mean, I think we're kind of missing that, but I guess the high scoring is kind of taking its place.
Yeah, it really sucks though too, because it's a lost art that is definitely needed today in the game where efficiency numbers are so low. You know, because of all of this 3-point shooting and jump shooting, especially with the bigs taking a lot more threes now, when especially looking at the current Bulls today, you know, we're missing that inside presence that we could definitely use right now. So, I mean, I hate that it's becoming a lost art. I get that the game is speeding up and it is kind of fun to watch, but yet still, I think it's something that we could definitely use in today's game. But let's move on to the next question, Marcus. So this next question we have from Kenneth Sims from Joliet, Illinois. He asks, what do you think your numbers would be in today's NBA game? Wilt once said he could score 70 a game when he was asked the same question in 1997.
Wilt was certainly a different breed from most individual basketball players, but you know, I think the way the game, we talked about playing on the low box, and the one thing that once you receive the ball on the low box, you know, it was difficult for one individual. Even when I received the ball on the low box during the time that we were competing against the Lakers, you know, they would have Magic Johnson and James Worthy both dropping back and forcing me to toss the ball out to one of my individuals on the perimeter to knock down the shot. And I think that was one of the areas that we really kind of struggled in the consistent basis. And that's what happens. I mean, even at the collegiate level, because of the zone play, it makes it even somewhat different, the way the game is played. But, you know, I think if you return to that phase of the game and you have individuals dropping back, defending, because it's difficult for individuals to play one-on-one. And if I was playing one-on-one on the box, and I think I probably have the highest field goal percentage in the history of the game. So I'm pretty sure that I would be able to put some points up on the board.
So that's definitely 60 a game, I'm guessing. No.
You know, I'm not going to toss out any numbers, but I could probably put up some numbers.
Yeah. And so, okay, let's continue on here. Mitchell Tate from Shreveport, Louisiana asks, life on the road brings about the chance to try different regional foods. Is there any place that you loved eating at during your career on the road that's still open today?
Well, you know, of course, it's been 30-something years plus since I've been on the road, so I'm not certain. You know, we continue to talk about the evolutionary process. You know, I remember during the time when I was in Chicago, how difficult it was, but now, you know, looking at, and I'm kind of really looking forward to returning to Chicago just for the All-Star process. Mm-hmm. And looking at all the changes, the hotels, and you know the difference. But when you speak in terms of one location for food, you know, there was not any. I enjoyed. There was a little Oriental place. I really enjoyed the food on Michigan Avenue. So and now that I tried to avoid really consuming an awful lot of red meat, but you know, before to get your really super nice, really thick steak, and the way it was prepared, it was there was some locations that was pretty special in Chicago, and and the cuisine in New Orleans, it was really a great place to eat as well. So, yeah,
and you mentioned the All-Star game coming up. What are you going to be doing there?
Well, I hopefully, guys, hopefully I can find the location. What my intent is to come in a little earlier, so that I realize that the NBA is really take over everything, like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But I would hope, like on a Saturday, a Thursday, that I would be able to come in and be able to move a few books, create some interest with, I'd like, perhaps maybe find a sponsor or something. And then, like, the first 50 people that comes in, the book will be theirs for whatever, because the corporation to come in and help me absorb the cost.
Yeah, exactly. I bought the book and I love it. And I loved the pictures that you have in it as well. And just kind of seeing you hanging out on vacation and doing fishing and things like that. What are some of the off-time things that you like to do in your life?
Well, now my focus, I have 3 grandkids. A set of twins that's 9 years old and an extra little 5-year-old boy. And I love spending time with my grandkids. And during the holidays was really kind of special for us. And certainly, other than that, activities every once in a while, I'll have an opportunity to go out and play golf. I think my last trip was out in California and play with in Reggie Jackson's charitable golf tournament. And eventually, I'm not playing in an awful lot of them, but I select a few of them. I'll participate in around the country. And Kyle Ripken, I played in his event, Joe Davis tournament in New York, and so not just tossing names out, but
Sure.
I enjoy playing a little bit of golf. Yeah.
I think your name is absolutely in the sentence with those other names. You're not dropping any names. You belong in that list, absolutely. So, describe. I want to cover this before it's too late. But you had one of the most kind of endearing speeches at the Hall of Fame, and really humble about everything that's transpired in your career. First, how come it took so darn long for you to get in the Hall of Fame? I mean, I think this should have been a decade earlier.
Yeah. That question has been asked a few times before, and even to this point, it says, "Oh gosh, you're a Hall of Famer now.
Yeah.
Is there anything different happening in your life because you're a Hall of Famer?" And of course, the same question is, "Oh no, absolutely not. It's pretty much the same." So there is no answers to many other questions, but we just accept it for what it is.
And so that you had to be elated when that announcement was made, right, of the Hall of Fame. I mean, it just had to blow you away after so much time, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Apparently, I had been in the nomination rotation for quite some time, and I was told that that I was about to be put back in. And once you've gone through the process for a period of time, then you're taken out, and then they insert you back in. And I was told that 2013 I was going to be back in the process, and then I received that call. It was in April, just right shortly during April Fool's Day.
Oh boy!
yeah, and I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, this is a really nice April Fool's." And then I received the confirmation, and that was. I really was truly elated and excited, and just kind of just really emotional about it.
Yeah, and Julius Erving brought you in, and I mean you had to really be joyful about seeing him and hanging out with him again, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a number of my colleagues and friends. It's funny because I think Dan Issel was one of my guys as well, and I remember competing against him at the collegiate level, and we beat Kentucky, and then we played together for many years, and we ended up winning this championship in 1975 together. And then later on, we were there at the Hall of Fame, and he said to me, "I thought that you was already inducted into the Hall of Fame." There was so many people that said that to me. I thought you was already was already a Hall of Famer. So it was a long process, but it's all good.
Well, we're so glad you are in, and we got one more thing to check off for your career, and that's number retired. And Wyse and I are going to lead the charge on that, I think.
Yes, sir.
Well, now I have to ask you guys, how much influence do you have?
Well,
I know that was just a joke. That was really just
strength in numbers, and we actually kind of do.
I was going to say, yeah, we have a pretty okay following.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh no, but Artis, I have like one more question for you. Out of all of the great feats that you've had during your basketball career, from being an ABA champion, ABA playoffs most valuable player, 6-time NBA All-Star, with all of that, what would you say was your greatest moment as a player overall?
Well, as a player, I think maybe being a witness to my firstborn child.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is probably one of the greatest moments of my entire life. My first daughter was born, and that was I think about a tremendous accomplishment, winning the championship, and that big run that we had in Chicago, competed against the best 2 out of 3 against the Portland Trailblazers, who win the NBA title that particular year, and and all the other great, nice runs and success that I had. But you're looking back, it's all about family.
Oh yeah, it's bigger than basketball.
Yeah.
So, fans out there, I want to remind you that Artis has a book that you can buy on Amazon, and it's called "Here Comes the A Train." Where did you get the name, the A Train?
Well, you know what? I received that in Chicago during the time that we was having our successful run, and I don't remember the announcer, and then all of a sudden just came up, talking about power and individuals, and so with that name was, and now we were the first team, in the history of the game to really turn. You had those gas lanterns, turn those things completely off and introduce the players, and it takes a while for them to once you light a bike up, and then that become a catchy little thing, and certainly.
Who was the announcer? Do you remember?
Repeat.
Who was the announcer that did that? Was it Tommy Edwards?
Remember. It could have been very well,
because we just had him on the show.
They were the ones you could ask. They were the ones that actually originally came up with the A Train, and that introduction was just magical.
So the book is called "Here Comes the A Train: The Story of Basketball Legend Artis Gilmore" by Artis Gilmore, with Mark Bruner and Reed Griffith-Fontaine. And I suggest everybody check it out. It's well worth it, and it's a great history of Artis's career and some behind-the-scenes things, and just overall fun. And Artis, I just went out there and took a chance because I knew that we had episode number 53 coming up, and we always like to kind of highlight the players of numbers of the episode numbers of the podcast that we're on. And I was just pleasantly, I guess you could say, stunned to get your response that you were in agreement to come on with us. And I'm so glad you did, and I hope you enjoyed your time with Wyse and I. And anytime that you'd ever like to come back on, I want you to consider this an extension of your own communication arm in terms of you have access to this show anytime you want.
Well, guys, I truly appreciate that. That is very kind, and I certainly will accept that invitation.
Wow, Wyse, that was one of the best things we've ever done in terms of, I think, being a Bulls fan and being a Bulls podcaster. What do you think?
This was absolutely one of our better episodes, simply due to the star power, of the all-time great Bull, blessing the show with his presence. I mean, it was definitely a blast for me, and I hope you all enjoyed it as much as we did, Bulls Nation, because, man, that was absolutely amazing. I know this is definitely going in our archive, so.
Yeah. And so any of you out there that actually want to say hello to Artis, his Twitter handle is @Artis Gilmore 53. So that 53 should have resonated with you a few times here, not only his number, but the episode number and all of that. So say hi to Artis and tell him that you heard him on the Bulls podcast and just really dug the interview. So without further delay, we will close this one out. And Wyse, you can be found at @radical_creator on both Twitter and Instagram, and just search for Wyse Black on YouTube. I know that this interview will actually be on your YouTube channel as well. And for me, you can find me at Marcus Couch, both on Twitter and Instagram. Wyse, what's your last impressions of this interview with Artis Gilmore?
Oh man, as I said, I mean, I'm just 100% thankful that he even blessed us with his presence coming on to the podcast, man. I mean, I couldn't have asked more of, a celebrity to bless the show. So I mean, that was epic in my opinion, man. So like I said, I just really hope that you all just take it for what it is and appreciate the great Artis Gilmore for coming onto the pod and doing this thing. It was a blast for me.
Until next time, thanks for listening, everybody. Go Bulls.
Go Bulls.
Hey, Bulls fans. This is your Bulls championship announcer, Ray Clay, saying so long, everybody. Go Bulls.